How often do you think about the Oscars? About how many Oscar-winning films there are and how many you've seen? Yeah, there's a few famous Oscar-winning films that we've all seen. You know, The Godfather and Lord of the Rings and Titanic. I'm King of the World, all that stuff. But the Oscars have been running since 1927. There are currently over 1,000 films, feature-length films, which have won an Oscar. How many have you seen? I did the numbers for myself. It's not many, and I consider myself quite a movie buff. So here then is the premise of this podcast. Every episode, I and a rotating cast of 2 guests will randomly select one of the 1,000 films that have won an Oscar, watch it, and talk about it, with the only requirement being that one of the 3 people on each episode has to have never seen the movie before we talk about it. That will get difficult with Star Wars. Please note that our coverage of a movie does not constitute an endorsement of it. My least favorite movie of 2016, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, won an Oscar for Best Makeup, while my favorite movie of 2016, The Handmaiden, wasn't even nominated for anything. Please also note that our coverage of a movie is not a blanket endorsement of any or all of the people involved in it. A lot of terrible people have won Oscars. Kevin Spacey won an Oscar 20 years before he was outed as an abuser, and Roman Polanski won one 20 years after. But every film, good, bad, or in many cases mediocre, that has won an Oscar is an important part of film history just for being there. And they all, on some level, deserve a tiny bit of consideration, even if that consideration ends up concluding that it's garbage. And with all of that in mind, I am your host, as always, Ellie McConaughey, and with me today is Todd B.
Hello.
And Justin Frankly.
Ellie, you expect a lot of me from this. Do you know what I had to put up with? I had to go to and subject myself to the indecency of giving Apple money.
And we are here today to talk about The Piano, the 1993 Jane Campion film, which won Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Original Screenplay at the 66th Academy Awards. And I'm going to be honest, I was really surprised that you hadn't seen this one before, Todd.
Yeah, I will admit. So this is now at least 2 times where I've been on this show where you've had a title which went, this is a blind spot for me. Jane Campion has been a big blind spot. Prior to this, it has only been Power of the Dog. So I am glad I got on for this. I really liked this.
Yeah. And, you know, I've been a big fan of this film for a while, you know. So it was like, I was really excited to roll this up. I think Anna Paquin is like the second youngest Oscar winner right now, as of right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Tatum O'Neal in Paper Moon, which I haven't seen. Yeah, so yeah, I'm trying to like I was trying to think of how I wanted to introduce this film, and I really liked the joke that I came up with in our chat, which is this film, Handshaking with Possession, a woman deals with being married to Sam Neill by taking on a new lover.
Midway through, I was just thinking, do I want to take this as a sign I need to finally sit down with Possession?
You absolutely need to sit down with Possession.
The main thing I was thinking of when I was watching this is like the, I don't know, like the sprawling, what would be the wording? How active this film is, and like the web work of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Mm-hmm.
Just like all the inexplicable people that are just like, they just show up randomly and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, this is so convenient.
I do think that it's extremely, Sam Neill is like one of the big breakout stars from New Zealand, and it's extremely fun. I think that there's some sort of like contractual obligation at this point. Are you a New Zealand filmmaker shooting in New Zealand? You have to spend at least 5 minutes of your movie emphasizing how pretty New Zealand is.
I think the biggest shock of the cast, I'm just getting this out of the way now, was I almost did a spit take at baby-faced Cliff Curtis in this.
He's like, he just comes out of nowhere. Anna Paquin, I was like, every time I rewatch this film, I just remember like, oh my god, she still just looks like Anna Paquin, like to a degree that's a little odd. Because I first knew her as Rogue, obviously, because that's how old I am.
Yeah, coming to this on like the heels of X-Men and Trick or Treat was kind of a, wait, oh god, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a really odd prequel to True Blood.
Oh, that's right. She's in that True Blood show. Anyone getting their dicks out in that show? I know it's like a really sexy show, I was extremely surprised. Maybe I don't know what format y'all watched it on. I was extremely surprised when I watched it on Blu-ray because I have the Criterion copy. Man, that's just Harvey Keitel's dick.
Man, that's actually not the first time I've seen that. Thank you, Bad Lieutenant.
You know, it comes out in a better context in this movie. I'll say that.
This is true. I mean, they're both good movies, but that's a very different mood right there.
I was going to say a similar thing about Holly Hunter, but thinking about it, like, what film is she in that, like, she doesn't inexplicably get naked in, like, what, The Incredibles, where she's not on screen?
We don't know what's going on in the recording booth.
She does not get naked in Raising Arizona, I
True.
don't think. She might get naked in Batman v Superman and like its R-rated cut. I don't know. I didn't watch that.
Any number of different Zack Snyder edits. There's one where it's out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly stacked cast for such a low budget movie. You know, we've got Holly Hunter, we have Anna Paquin, who obviously wasn't a name at this point. She was like a kid, but you know, we got Harvey Keitel, we have Sam Neill, and is this post Jurassic Park?
Let me double check when they were filming. Hold that thought.
Or did they get really lucky and it came out when this was like hitting theaters at the same time?
Okay, so this was apparently filming around like 91.
We're just sitting here. They both came out in 93, so same time.
Yeah.
More or less, yeah.
I wonder if that like so one of the things that struck me, and I didn't know this when I first watched it. This was a surprisingly big hit. Like it was made on $7 million, which is not a lot for a period drama. It looks really good though.
Even outside of the scenery, it is a gorgeously shot movie.
Mm-hmm. And like it made like $150 million off that. That's a huge return for such a low budget movie.
People couldn't resist the raw animal magnetism of Harvey Keitel, I guess.
Was he okay? So this is always the question. Like Harvey Keitel is not my kind of dude. Let me be clear about that. Like I'm sometimes into men. I think I'm the only one who's like that in this particular call. But I'm not particularly into them. But is he like was he like considered a sex symbol at this point in his career?
I'm honestly not sure because we were talking this around the same time as like Reservoir Dogs. I'm not sure how he was really seen in that light.
He's been in a lot of Oscar winning movies. He was in previous episode Thelma and Louise, and like I guess he's kind of is he intended to be hot in that movie? I just kind of think of him as like Scorsese's guy. You know, him and what's his face, Robert De Niro.
Yeah, they're joined at the hip. I mean, he's in like what, 6 films?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was Scorsese's. It's like in Scorsese's first film, so that's how far back they go.
Mm-hmm. They're buddies.
I mean, like Harvey Keitel's one of those people who's like, sort of like Dennis Quaid, where his version of getting old is just he's the exact same except he has wrinkles now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you know, even like as far back as like Taxi Driver, it just like he's looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, but like one of the things I found out, like getting older, as I learned about films from like the 70s and 80s, like at one point Mickey Rourke was considered a sex symbol. So like I genuinely don't know what was considered a sex symbol back then.
Here's the thing. You look at Mickey Rourke and say like Angel Heart, I can see that. It was mostly just he took a hard turn in the early 90s.
Not a lot of did not take care of himself. Okay, I guess that's there. Or like Nick Cage was considered a heartthrob at one point. I don't know.
Well, obviously.
I don't know. Like I feel like I can't tell if Harvey Keitel is intended to be like, if this is supposed to be like a like animal magnetism kind of thing, or if we're genuinely supposed to think he's really hot.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, like even in terms of framing, there's nothing in beyond the fact that it's supposed to be like an eroticism thing, but like I don't feel that the way they frame Harvey in this is much different than like Sam Neill. That like they don't feel like they're supposed to be less attractive than Harvey is in the film. Like beyond the fact, like, you know, there's certain framings where it's like they're just not they're not emotionally intimate.
Mm-hmm.
He gets like really fucking like skeeved out whenever like she tries to, like, even near the end when she tries to like initiate anything, he just sort of like gets like weirded the fuck out and makes her stop.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, I mean, like neither of them are unattractive, and so it's like I'm not sure if it is just like this impetuous, like Well, no, because it's not, because he feels that he's like bribing her. So like even then it's like a thing that she comes around to accepting, but like even immediately, or like at the early stages of their arrangement, like it's more of a thing that she feels put upon having to put up with him. Like I'm not really sure like what makes her like take that extra step of actually like emotionally caring for him.
So like the one thing that makes me feel like that is like the difference between Sam Neill and Harvey Keitel. They are called. I know that Harvey Keitel is called George. Sam Neill is named Alistair, which I don't. It feels,
Alistair Stewart and George Baines.
Yeah.
yeah, very very honestly kind of bodice ripper names there, but whatever, we'll roll with it.
I mean, he literally does.
He does. Well, there's this like, okay. Before I get into thinking about the difference between them, there is this like, I don't want to call it a subgenre because it's not really a subgenre. There's this like variant on a genre film where like, okay, what if we did the genre film? The space marine movie or the superhero movie or the whatever, what have you, but we took it seriously enough to make it like to examine its underpinnings and to make a complicated work of art out of it. And like this feels a little bit like that for bodice rippers, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I can see the case for it.
But like the difference that I'm sort of seeing between Alistair and George is that George does actually seem to like be interested in what Ada wants as a person. He first starts to like her when they go to the beach and get her piano, and he hears her play. He doesn't. He's pushy, but not in like an intense like. There is a sexual assault scene. It's not George who does it. That seems really unpleasant. Like I think like that's sort of the difference is that Alistair wants his wife. George kind of wants Ada, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And actually, that makes sense. And to your point, like the titular piano is kind of the key thing. Where for Alasdair, it's furniture, whereas George kind of looks and goes like, "This is how you express yourself. I get it now."
Hmm. I did. Speaking of actually caring about doing something for her, I did like the intercut of George going down on Ada with Alistair watching them, and then the dog starts licking his hand. Got a genuine laugh out of me. I guess I should probably warn the audience, although if you don't know, like we're talking about the piano, the movie's about fucking. We're going to be talking about fucking. I'm sorry. If you're one of those people who don't think sex scenes should be in movies, I don't know. Go watch Chantal Ackerman have lesbian sex for 11 minutes and maybe you'll calm down.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's all in a spectrum, right? It's within the broad spectrum of like erotic drama pieces. That there's tasteful ways of going about it, and then there's Caligula. So like there's a wide breadth there with acceptability, right?
Hey, that's not. I did roll Caligula because that's obviously an Oscar win.
The example I was actually thinking was "Blue is the warmest color," which in general is a movie I like, but after a while, it's like, man, this sex scene is still going, isn't it?
I don't like blue as the warmest color. I have to talk about that movie someday? I don't think it won
I think it
anything.
was nominated. I don't think it won. I could be wrong, but it's been years, which we're like going. Overall, I mostly like this, but yeah, those sex scenes just keep going.
They do.
And then finding out the production history kind of sort of has made me reluctant to go back.
It did not win an Oscar. I don't have to talk about blue as the warmest color, so I guess I might as well get my thoughts on it out right about here. Blue as the warmest color is kind of fascinating to me as a movie because, like, obviously there's all the stuff that we learned after about how it was shot, but like, man, it feels like it was shot that way. It feels like it was shot with people who were uncomfortable and unhappy. It doesn't seem like it's taking either of these characters very seriously. And the way the director talks about it, he talks about them like they're, I wanted to shoot them like they were sculptures. I'm like, they're people, man. What are you talking about?
Oh god, I'd forgot that quote. Yikes.
The main thing that I had an issue with Blue is the warmest color is the fact that the protagonist is the viewpoint person, so like they're the worst, and so having to like experience the film from their perspective and us being expected to sort of relate to or at least sympathize with their position, I'm like, No, she's awful. She's like, how dare you get upset with me for cheating on him? I'm like, yeah, because you fucking cheated on her.
I will say, I'm obviously not opposed to extremely explicit movies. Love Lies Bleeding is one of my favorite movies of this year. The Handmaiden gets name dropped in our opening title, and that has a probably equally long lesbian sex scene. But like that movie actually cares about these two women and why they're having sex. Also, it's way hotter. Like just throwing that out there.
It is still on my to-do list, but thank you for reminding me.
I'm gonna make you don't watch it with me though. It's an extremely uncomfortable movie to watch with someone you're not romantically involved with.
I already survived watching Perfect Blue with a room full of people I was only varying degrees of familiar with. That was uncomfortable enough.
No, you gotta do Crash. You have to do Crash with your parents.
Look, the furthest I went with that was seeing The Exorcist with my mother. I think that was my line.
The worst I ever personally experienced was watching Girl with the Dragon Tattoo with my parents.
I think my worst was seeing A History of Violence with my mom.
Hell yeah.
And that movie rocks, but it's just like, I want to leave. Please.
One of the things that like kept like I understand you just accept that he what would be the wording for it, like has gone native or at least has accepted the Maori culture and they've sort of accepted him as part of it, but the one of the questions I kept having throughout the film is like, how long has he been on New Zealand, I guess? Because it's one of the things where it's been long enough where he's again been accepted in the Maori culture and he has like the face tattoos and can interpret for them, and they feel like the vague need to assist him with stuff, but like I couldn't like grasp what his relationship with them was. Like it seems like everyone he talks to who is Maori just sort of like, I don't know, like takes the piss out of him, like where they're just kind of like fucking with him. Like what's like the name that they have subtitled for him, like dry balls, something like that, because like they're making fun of the fact that he's just sort of like a fucking hermit.
Like, there's that one scene where they're basically like, why are you still hung up on your wife over there? Come on, hook up with someone here.
I mean, like, so my impression of like Maori culture, and I want to be extremely clear, both fellow speakers and audience, I'm not an expert on Maori culture. Do not take anything I say extremely seriously. I do not know what I'm talking about. My impression from the outside is that you don't get the tattoos, the face tattoos, unless you're like considered a member of their culture. And from that perspective, I think the implication that I got is that they're kind of just always taking the piss out of everyone all the time.
Mm.
Like they call him dry balls, but they probably just insult. It's probably just one of those like things where they insult each other all the time. That was my impression from the movie. It did have, I did note in my notes they had a Maori language and culture, whatchamacallit, advisor on set, so that's good.
I mean, at least a handful had to be Maori. Like one of the faces that I like. I don't know if it's a retroactive recognition thing, but Cliff Curtis. Yeah, as you were saying earlier, Cliff Curtis. He's just like he's just there, and you're like, I don't know. It's like a jump scare.
See, if here's what I go, wait, is that holy crap?
He is like you do not expect to see him in this movie, and he's not even like a big character. He's in it for like, what is it, like 2 minutes
maybe.
This was, I am aware, broadly speaking, that like he started to become a big name in the New Zealand film industry in a movie called like We Were Warriors or something. Let me look it up. I'm just gonna look it up. I'm gonna mute myself while I Google this. Okay, it's called Once Were Warriors, and it was literally like released the year after this one. So, and he was in a bunch of stuff. He was in Bringing Out the Dead in a couple years. He was in Training Day. He's a name.
Yeah.
He's apparently in Fear the Walking Dead a bunch, which is a show that I don't accept as real.
I will give a shout out for this movie because I know it will not turn up on this program. He is in the criminally underseen Sunshine.
Yeah, that's not a movie coming to the biggest night in podcasting anytime soon. I'm sorry to say. He was also very unfortunately in the beloved 2010 film The Last Airbender. Also not coming to this podcast anytime soon.
Not unless you ever decide to do something on the Razzies, but why would you?
I wouldn't wanna. I'm good. I'm set. Yeah, we're kind of like talking around the actual plot of the film, which is it is another, like, I don't want to call it a totally cheating plot because, like, it's very clear from the jump she is not super jazzed to be in this marriage, but she is cheating on her husband with Harvey Keitel, which I guess is better than cheating on him with the tentacle monster a la Possession. That movie's a lot.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of stuff that I like about this movie. It's a very pretty movie, but it's sort of like, and in very odd moments, like, I really like the shot at the end of the canoe being dragged out into the waves. But it also, like, I also like just getting to think about, like, man, moving a piano from, like, Scotland to New Zealand in the 1800s, man, I would kill you. I would kill you dead if you made me do that for you.
Somewhere halfway across the world, Klaus Kinski's in the South American jungle yelling, "Amateurs!"
Yeah, how did that work out for Klaus Kinski?
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm sitting here. I'm trying to, like, come up with a thematic overtone to the film because it is very clearly a film with a lot of really great, like, no matter what else I have to say about it, it's a film with some really immaculate vibes. Like, it's got two moments of monologues and, like, they're clearly just exposition, but I like them because they're vibes, man. The vibes on the opening monologue are really good.
I mean, I was honestly surprised Michael Nyman's score was not nominated because that in of itself is a vibe. And that's kind of one where I was actually looking up some of that are like, just going to listen to this kind of chill while getting ready for the recording.
Mm-hmm. It's good, and so actually we can talk a little bit about what it won for. So it won for Holly Hunter, who plays the main character, who does not speak a single line of dialogue on screen. Man, do I keep accidentally pulling movies about sign language? If I roll Coda for the next episode, I'm gonna be unhappy. Anna Paquin for the daughter and screenplay, and it lost picture and director to Schindler's List. It was Schindler's List's year.
Yeah.
Man, what an odd year at the Oscars overall. I know I say that all the time, but it really was.
See, that's the angle shoot. You're saying that there's X number of years of Oscars, and every year we have X number of things. But if we keep having films that have won like 19 Oscars, then we just have to. Well, it's like, we only have to cover 3 films that year.
Well, this year the big win. Schindler's List was the big winner. Holly Hunter beat a bunch of movies. What's Love Got to Do with It for Angela Bassett. Stockard Channing for 6 Degrees of Separation. Emma Thompson for The Remains of the Day, and Deborah Winger for Shadowlands. And Anna Paquin beat, there's Rosie Perez for Fearless, Winona Ryder for The Age of Innocence, Emma Thompson again for In the Name of the Father, and Holly Hunter for The Firm. Guys, do you know that the other actors exist? And Steven Spielberg has 2 movies winning. Jurassic Park won a bunch of technicals this year. What's happening this year at the Oscars? What's going on over there?
We're unraveling the conspiracy. It's the New Zealand conspiracy. We're getting to the bottom of
it. we're getting into this. I'm just saying, like, the 10 Best Actress nominations being across, and supporting actress being across 8 people is weird.
A little bit. Like, I gotta admit, looking at it's not really his film, but damn, that Best Supporting Actress slate that year is a wild cross-section.
It is, yeah. I liked Emma Thompson in The Name of the Father. That was a good performance. I'm surprised I didn't win more stuff this year, if any stuff. I'm sorry, I'm doing that thing that I occasionally do during episodes where I just, like, look over the winners from that year and go, huh.
I mean, I'm doing the same thing right now, and I was like, yeah, unfortunately, that's the film that's not going to come with the show because it was in Always the Bridesmaid, Never the Bride, but that is a good movie.
Hey, movies that are eligible for this show. Who's excited to talk about Mrs. Doubtfire one day?
Hell yeah. Be there day one.
I'm gonna fucking hold you to that, Justin.
Hell yeah.
Now you've been marked.
Going through the films like, would I cry bitter betrayed tears if Fearless won an Oscar, so I'd have an excuse to talk about that? No. But, for what they expected Anna Paquin to do at the age of 9 when they were filming this thing, because she was 12 when she won, but when they filmed this, it's like, here's this 9-year-old, and like she's sort of this she's like literally the voice for another character for like the majority of the film, or at least the interpreter of this other character, and yeah, just sort of the stuff that they're expecting this child actor to do, and like, could that have tipped the scales a bit, where it's just like, oh well, it's they're so believable within the performance, but yeah, I think the Oscar is well deserved.
It's like, honestly, she's got an interesting character in that regard, per the interpreter point, because like, yeah, she is basically her mother's mouthpiece for much of this. But as we go along the movie, we realize like there is so much in her mother's life she does not understand her process up to the point where that leads to her making the infamous mistake that kicks off that final act.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because like I said that Holly Hunter doesn't speak at all during the movie, and she doesn't, which means that her performance has to be entirely physical, and like she's really good. She's really good in this movie.
Also, the fact that like they didn't dub her hands, like that's just her
Yeah,
playing the piano.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Finding that out was because at first I didn't want to look it up. I was like, is she getting to the credits and seeing her listen to the piano solo? Was a props to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she doesn't form like an actual word on screen, but at the very beginning and at the end of the film, they have like an internal monologue where it's sort of her expressing her thoughts about what speaking is, or at least what her voice is.
Mm-hmm.
And like at the very end of the film, she's like taking voice lessons because her muteness is not like an accident or caused by an accident. It's a choice. She's choosing not to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is interesting. Like kind of circling to the thing with Harvey, or at least the Baines character, with him, like with it being vague about like what his relationship with the Maori is. Like there's a lot of this film that's like they just don't say, or like that they bring the question up, but then they say that like, oh, that's incorrect, or like that's not entirely accurate. Like a few times throughout the film, Anna Paquin's character will fabricate a reason why the mother is mute, and every single one of them is incorrect. Or like they'll invent, it's like, oh, like what happened to your father, and she's like, oh, she'll like spin a yarn about what happened to her father, and like that didn't happen either.
Mm-hmm. And I really liked that because like it's that and the her like her being kind of annoying, but also kind of like back and forth about which of her two, I don't want to call them parents, like which of her two guardians she supports more. Is it feels very authentically childish. I hate it when I've made this point on several occasions that I hate it when movies write children as just like perfect little angels, or
Tiny adults.
Yeah.
yeah, or tiny adults.
She's not precocious. She's not doing like the 1,000-yard stare that was as in vogue for child performances for a while there.
hmm I think that Anna Paquin is very good in the role. I do think the fact that she was like 10 when they shot this is a big part of the reason why she got an Oscar for it. But also like playing an authentic child in a way that feels authentic on screen is extremely hard, especially since you have to be a child when you're doing it. And so like yeah, props to her. I think she's really good in this. I wish she did more stuff besides True Blood. I haven't seen anything she's done in about a billion years because I never watched True Blood. What else? What has she been in recently?
She was in one segment of Trick or Treat, if that counts.
I like Trick or Treat a lot,
Yeah,
Justin. I have to tell you, that movie is 18 years old.
yeah. I think the last thing I remember from was like I think they got her back on the X-Men train for Days of Future Past, and I'm sure what she's done since then.
She has a very minor role in The Irishman that I don't remember. She's mostly been in TV since she got on True Blood.
Harvey Keitel reunion. He's in that. He's an Irishman too.
Everyone who's ever worked with Scorsese who was still breathing got into The Irishman. Let's be real.
Except Jerry Lewis, he knows what he did.
He knows what he did. And I wouldn't be unhappy if if Emma Thompson had won for The Name of the Father, only because I'd love to get to talk about In the Name of the Father. Great movie.
Yeah.
But it's also like a year with a lot of up and coming big names. This was the year that Tom Hanks stopped being the funny guy and started being serious actor Tom Hanks. This is when Tommy Lee Jones like came out of fucking nowhere. We got Leonardo DiCaprio here.
Going back to The Name of the Father, I think this might be one of Pete Postlewaite's best performances, which is saying something because that was a guy who was around.
Mm-hmm. He was around. He was a great actor when he wanted to be. Oh fuck me! This was also the year Bruce Springsteen won an Oscar. Hell yeah! We love Bruce Springsteen in this house. This podcast is pro Bruce Springsteen. I don't know if that's a hot take among these people, but I'm saying it.
Oh no.
You'll get no argument here.
So yeah, and obviously we have Jane Campion, who unfortunately didn't get to do very much after this because of the way Hollywood treats women directors. I'm just saying, like, she had one kind of bomb in '03 In the Cut, which I don't even think is a bad movie. I think In the Cut's really good. I think In the Cut was 2003's equivalent to, like, Jennifer's Body or last year's Lisa Frankenstein. Like, this movie rocks. You all just don't get it. And then she just makes one movie a decade now, which is a huge bummer to me. Because I think she's a really talented director, and I think this movie really proves it.
Man, yeah, looking at the timeline of her filmography, that I do not think In the Cut was it hit that hard.
It wasn't even that big of a bomb. It doubled its budget, but that's it. But still, like, I don't know. Like, I've made this point before. One of the actual core problems with being a minority director, and we just kind of watched that happen in real time to the Wachowski sisters, is like, when you're a minority director, it doesn't matter how big your previous films were. You whiff once and you're fucking done. Like, do you think the Wachowski sisters would get a chance to make another movie if they'd dropped like Sucker Punch or I don't know, like Zack Snyder has had like a dozen bombs at this point, and he keeps getting a chance.
I'm genuinely convinced he has some pictures of an executive feeding a body into a wood chipper.
And the same happens to actors too. Like, you know, we've made jokes about Jared Leto on this pod before, but like Jared Leto's helmed like a half dozen bombs at this point, and he just keeps on chugling.
Or what's his face? We need to talk about Kevin Mann, Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
I do think they are done. I think that The Flash is enough to drop you, and if it wasn't that for a bomb was just like, then you cannot let them out in public. that is another movie we won't have to talk about on this podcast.
I was like, look, if only one career, it's like, if one career from We Need to Talk About Kevin had to die, I'm just glad Lynn Ramsey gets to keep working.
I'm always glad to see Lynn Ramsey, if I'm being real. I had other points that I wanted to bring up. You know what this film does really well? Parallel shots. I didn't notice it until this viewing, that the visual connection between Alasdair with the axe and the Bluebeard play.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. As soon as I'm talking, the axe was like, oh crap, the play is foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where I was actually braced for the outcome of that to be worse in a few regards. Like, even up to the moment of the stump, I was braced for it to find out, like, he took her whole hand off at the wrist.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought the first time I saw it too. Yeah, I do understand that at some point in the writing process, she was supposed to, like, when the piano gets thrown off the canoe and she chooses to like put her foot in the rope at some point in the writing process, she was actually just going to die there. I don't necessarily like that as an ending. I think that's kind of like an unnecessary downer. Yeah. That having been said, I do like, speaking of the axe, that like rather than get killed or go to jail or really suffer any comeuppance, Sam Neill goes to Harvey Keitel and just says, "Look, this whole marriage thing is not working out for me. Can you just like leave and take her? I'm not jiving with this."
Also, honestly, as far as that pivot goes, I think that's one where Sam Neill was a perfect choice, because he is the kind of actor that can do both the almost disarmingly soft-spoken to the point where like, maybe he's not such a bad guy, and then when he makes that turn, it's like, nope, I stand corrected.
So, like, one of the things the movie does really well, and this is why I think that, like, hiring a woman director is a good idea for this kind of movie, is it does sort of, like, very rapidly inform the audience that, like, Sam Neill might not be a bad dude. We don't know whether or not Sam Neill is a bad dude yet, but, like, he's not a great partner. You know, he doesn't really care about her as a person. He kind of like instantly jumps to, oh, she's playing the piano on the table, she must be fucking crazy, instead of like, I don't know, man, she misses her piano. She was like, leave my luggage behind, take the piano. Leave the gun, take the piano.
It was one of those things where like I get it's like of the era, like since to hear a drum it's like 1800s or whatever. It's like
Mhm.
it's one of those things where it's like halfway through the movie I'm like, what was he expecting to get out of this? Like I don't know. Like I know that it was an arranged marriage, but arranged by who? And like again, like what was he expecting? It's like as far as I can tell, she was like a mail order bride. Basically, it's
Yeah.
like
It's not like it's I need you to raise my kids because she's bringing the kid with her.
yeah. He doesn't have any kids of his own. He's like he's this bachelor. He's this somewhat rich. So like, was it just like a spur of the moment thing he just decided to do, or was it like how preordained was this? Because it seems like it was somewhat sudden in their life.
So, reading between the lines, and one of the both strengths and weaknesses of the film, and you mentioned this, Justin, is that it doesn't tell us a lot, but it kind of like lets you it leaves you enough pieces to like fill in the gaps if you're willing to do that, which is both the strength and a weakness of it. But reading between the lines, she's very clearly extremely wealthy. Like the house she's in the opening monologue is fuck off massive. It's large enough that Flora is running around on roller skates, but also like Flora was had out of wedlock, and she's getting shipped off to New Zealand of all fucking places. So, and like, not this is not me like slamming New Zealand as a place. I would love to be in New Zealand right now. America's not looking very friendly, but also I think New Zealand's really cool. I'm just saying, like, going from Scotland to New Zealand is a deranged trip to make in 1800.
Yeah,
Yeah, especially since like New Zealand and Australia were still like penal colony. Well, I'll think a little bit past then actually.
Mm-hmm.
you get the sense at that point it was, well, there's a kid here, so we can't just pack her off to a convent. So, plan B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the impression I got, that he wants a wife, but he's not like, he might be wealthy or like connected, or I don't. They still have. I was gonna say like England didn't still have nobility at this point. Like what the fuck am I talking about? They still have it now, or like noble, but he's also not like well regarded, or he wouldn't be in New Zealand. So this is like this is the best you got for both of them, which is why I think the decision to be like, you know what, I am not vibing with this. Could you take her and go? Is a reasonable choice for him to make, because I don't really get the feeling he's super psyched to be married to her either.
Mm.
And there is that bit at the end, you mentioned it earlier, where they she tries to connect to him, not super hard, because I don't think she likes him very much, but like he basically rejects her.
Yeah.
One of the things about the film that I think was interesting in terms of like an overall arc is like they keep coming back to like the piano being her voice, and by the time that she rejects the piano, or at least has decided upon this new life, only then after she abandons it does she decide to begin to speak for herself.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that when I was looking up the film, I guess for the time, as much as you can say for the time in like '93, it's like people were interpreting the film as like I guess feminist. I guess would be the wording,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those things where I guess I kind of get it because like what would even be the wording? It's like I understand that like the film is ultimately like she's making a choice for herself. She's sort of in the capacity that she is able to in the culture that they're in, making a choice or like asserting her will again as far as they're able to. But it's one of those things where it's like maybe it's like the march of progress, or maybe it's just things changing over time. But it's one of those things where I found it hard to come to anyone's side necessarily, and I guess that's one of the things I think is interesting about the film, where it's like no one is like no one is an unalloyed good, where it's like even
Mm-hmm.
like Harvey Keitel's character is a bit fucking weird. Alistair is obviously fucking weird. Her kid is doing kid stuff, and so is a bit
Yeah.
rambunctious isn't the right word, but like sort of vacillates. She goes between it's like I'm never going to call him Papa to like I'm going to go to him immediately to give him the note you said not to give him.
Mm-hmm. The note which Harvey Keitel can't read.
Whoops.
And I don't know. It's interesting to read it or like see people refer to the film as like a feminist work when it's like, even within the scope of the film, they're like, I can't compel you to do this because I feel like you're whoring yourself to me, and I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like it's less her choice, and like she makes it her choice, but only after it's sort of been presented to her, or sort of thrust upon her as a choice. It's like she doesn't go to Harvey Keitel's character in lieu of anything else. She starts with wanting the piano, and then the interest in him is spawned from that.
Mm-hmm. So I will say that one of the risks I think a lot of critics take, and this would have been especially true back in '93, is like any film directed by a woman must be immediately interpreted through a feminist lens. I don't even necessarily think that's a mistake so much as I think that that's like it's a very limited viewpoint. That having been said, I do appreciate that, like, I don't know, Harvey Keitel is not a great dude in this movie. He does basically bribe her into continually pushing her boundaries. Although again, part of the strength and weakness of the film is not filling in the gaps. The implication I kind of got is that something similar happened with Flora's father. They also had a relationship built around teaching and learning the piano. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's the intent. That is what I got from like cutting from Harvey Keitel's first lesson to the story of how Flora was conceived. That is my interpretation.
And especially going along the similar lines, like the first story Flora puts together, it's the thing she describes her father and Ada having was shared love of music.
Mm-hmm. Which is the kernel of truth inside of that story, at least if the story that we hear from Ada is accurate. But like I do like that his reasoning isn't like he doesn't stop the arrangement because she's not doing what he wants. He stops it because like no, I want an emotional connection, not just a physical thing, which is I mean it's something. It's interesting. It makes the characters interesting. I don't think it is I think that interpreting it through a feminist lens is an interesting take. I think any movie over 5 years old is going to have problems that when being interpreted through modern lenses.
Yeah.
And this movie is 32 years old this year, so it's obviously going to have some problems.
Like it was one of those things where I go back and forth, like different books I've read, and like the book series I kept thinking of in terms of her choices, or at least the way that she's going about asserting her will, were the Aes Sedai from Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
The Aes Sedai within that book series, a major theme of them is control through submission. It's like it's less forcing other people to do what they want, though they do certainly do that, but more they make it seem like they're doing the thing they want from their own choices.
Mm-hmm.
Like they set things up in such a way where it's like they give them the opportunity. It makes it seem like they are submitting to the other person's will, but by the way that they've structured the interaction, they are ultimately doing what the Aes Sedai wants.
Makes sense.
And so it's like throughout the film, again, like she is at first coerced, but like once she does begin to have feelings for Keitel's character, it does seem like she, because she does want this, or realize that she does want this, she begins to seek it out more actively, and even to against her own best interests. Like even before Alistair assaults her later in the film, or literally physically assaults her, even after that, like her and him like physically fighting, to her running away to Harvey Keitel's character, and like him having to physically restrain her, and she like grabbing onto like ropes and trees to like drag herself towards it because that's what she wants.
So my thought process was, I mentioned earlier that like I sort of interpret this as kind of like I don't want to use the word deconstruction because it's not a deconstruction, but like an examination of the bodice ripper genre,
Mhm.
and so that would make Harvey Keitel in this context, the the big strong alpha in the I don't hate that fucking word. I don't know what else I want to like. The guy whose shirt is always fucking open on the cover, you know?
The Don Juan.
Yeah, precisely.
Your description earlier of like that animal energy type thing, I think that applies here.
The Kavorka man. And so like making a movie that takes that plot line seriously and asking, okay, but what is it about this that would make him attractive to an actual person, you know, who would take that story seriously. You know, I would compare it heavily to, and this is going to seem like an insane comparison, but stay with me for a second, to the second 50 Shades of Grey movie, where there's a really great moment in Dan Olsen's video talking about how that movie handles consent and pushing boundaries by not even addressing them, by just going, well, we don't really need to talk about her consent in this case because we know she's down for it because we're writing the fucking movie. And that's something I think this movie, if it has anything, it might not understand why she wants to do it. Like, she clearly, when she goes to him to sleep with him, there's a moment where she like seems angry with him but can't explain herself because she doesn't, because he can't read what she writes down. Obviously, she's not going to take her daughter to go fuck Harvey Keitel.
That is one of the things where like when the daughter does like find them later, like obviously they don't like literally show her in the room, but it's like it's one of those things where it's like you gotta love a film where the person who wins the Oscar is like absolutely positively would not be allowed to watch the fucking movie.
Yep, that's always great. You know, it's one of those things where I'm watching Anna Paquin peeking through that wall, and I'm wondering, did they make it clear to her on set what she's looking at, or is this like a Shining situation where like the kid thought he was filming a family drama, and Kubrick was filming what he was, and like that's a perfectly acceptable way to shoot. I think that like there is an instinct to shield child actors, and obviously you don't want, like, obviously there was nothing inside that room because like that would be an insane way to shoot.
Yeah.
There are some movies that don't agree with me on that, and I'm not going to talk about them. Uh, but I think that, like, asking the movie and asking Ada why she's attracted to Harvey Keitel, I think the movie does. I think whether or not you like the movie, and I'm sure that there are people out there who hate this movie with a passion for a thousand suns, probably for some of the reasons you brought up, Justin. Who I think it will come down to whether or not you buy that she would actually be into this guy, which is obvious. Which is honestly kind of like the risk of any romance film. If you don't believe that Harvey Keitel and Holly Hunter, or anyone, Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien, or Billy Crystal and, oh God, what's her name?
Meg Ryan or
Meg Ryan, if you don't believe that they want to be together and deserve to be together, then the movie's just not going to fucking work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, romance is one of those things among many genres where it lives or dies on how well you buy the leads.
And like that's like we single out romance for that, but like it's true for a lot of movies. A comedy will live or die based on whether or not it makes you laugh. A horror movie will usually live or die on whether or not it scares you. So like that's just kind of true for a lot of movies, really, a lot of genres. Go ahead, Justin. Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah, again, like I did enjoy the film. It's just one of those things where it's like as I was watching, I was like just thinking, like, one of the things that stood out to me when I was watching it was how to phrase it. Again, sort of going to her voice, I think it's interesting that once she actually does get what she wants, she does decide to abandon the piano. And for the first time in however long, they said she stopped speaking when she was 6. But like, she's decided to use her voice now that she's in a situation where she's allowed to speak for herself,
Mm-hmm.
because now she's with a person who does appreciate her decisions, does care about what she feels. And so in that way, I do agree with at least that interpretation of like the film being somewhat of a metaphor for like for voice, for being able to advocate for yourself or being able to advocate for your interests in that way. And like, again, like as you're saying before, like the romance kicks off with Harvey appreciating her piano playing, which in this metaphor would be appreciating her voice or appreciating her expressiveness. And the film is only resolved after Sam Neill's character, quote unquote, hears her voice in his mind telling him that she doesn't want this and she wants to go away, and him accepting that as a choice.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that, like, how do I put this in a way that makes sense? The film frames her initial romance with Flora's father around him being able to understand her without her, needing to speak, right? So in that context, Harvey, the reason she falls in love with Harvey Keitel is because he can do the same thing. And once Sam Neill can hear her, once he can finally hear what she wants, understand what she wants, he's like, "Oh, I gotta stop this. I gotta stop doing this to her, and really stop doing this to me." But we don't care about Sam Neill. I'm not gonna lie to you, dude. Chopping off your wife's finger is an insane thing to fucking do.
You can't really walk that back.
No. It is a little disappointing that he never sees any like comeuppance for that. He just sort of does it, and but like legally he would probably have been fine back then because the world is a hell pit.
I mean, what's illegal about damaging your property? No.
Yeah.
At that point, it's just the lowered expectations of, oh, thank God it was only a finger.
Mm-hmm. The world, man, sucks.
Yeah.
And she gets a cool a cool prosthetic finger.
I will acknowledge that part of me wants to be extremely cynical and be like, oh, she learned to speak aloud because like doing sign language with that prosthetic finger is gonna fucking suck. But that's not really that's me being mean.
That's another handshake meme we can do. The piano and then the snowman having the main character have a cool prosthetic finger.
Mr. Police, you could have saved her. I gave you all the piano keys.
There it is right there. I don't think any other comparison is going to top that one at this point.
The other winner I had earlier was the piano and then The Last Temptation of Christ. Kissing Harvey Keitel leads to the main character being horrifically maimed.
So what you're saying is we shouldn't kiss Harvey Keitel. That is the lesson of the piano. That is the theme we are meant to take away. I'm writing it down in my book.
We can't quite call it the kiss of death because they do kind of walk it off. Well, okay, Jesus takes a little longer, but...
Jesus walks it off after 3 days. That's what he was doing in there all those 3 days, walking in a circle, walking it off. I was very, it won Best Original Screenplay, so I went and looked what else was nominated that year. So like Philadelphia was nominated that year. In the Line of Fire, of all things, was nominated that year, and that's my of all things. But then you look at the other two, and it was Sleepless in Seattle and Dave.
All I'll say for The Line of Fire is like, look, the one nomination earned was Malkovich. I'm gonna let him have that one. He's genuinely good in that.
We, again, much like Bruce Springsteen, this podcast is pro John Malkovich. I don't know if being John Malkovich eligible for this pod. I don't think so, because God is dead.
Yeah, that, per your point though, yeah, that is a weird slate.
It is not eligible for this podcast. It was nominated for Best Director, Best Supporting Actress for Catherine Keener, and Best Original Screenplay. It won none of them because God is dead. I want to talk about being John Malkovich. It lost all of those. It lost screenplay and director to American Beauty. Are you kidding me?
Ooh, that's going to be an episode, although I'm going to advise you probably want to keep me off that one because I'm probably going to spend a good chunk of it going Richard Farnsworth was robbed.
Yeah, that's fair, but also, like, I hate American Beauty. I hate it so fucking much. Anyway, I don't even remember where I was going with. Oh, Dave. I was 1,000% just floored to find out that Dave, the president switching movie with Kevin Kline, was an Oscar nominee.
I had completely I don't know if I even knew that before looking that up.
I definitely didn't know it. I mean, like, I guess it's not that outside of the realm of possibility. Previous episode with Justin, no less, breaking away the biking movie with Jackie Earle Haley and Dennis Quaid, very young, both of them, is an Oscar winner. So I don't know, man. Weird movies win Oscars.
Every so often, you kind of got to appreciate the wild card element, though.
Mm. The only bit of trivia I know about Dave is that the writer, who also wrote Pleasantville and Hunger Games, if you want some weird picks, has a copy of the screenplay autographed by Bill Clinton.
Huh.
Roll with that information. Live with it. Live with it in your brain. He also wrote Big, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I am looking at his list now. We have Big, Mr. Baseball, Dave, the Lassie movie from '94, Trial and Error, Pleasantville, Seabiscuits. I think the phrase here was journeyman.
Yeah, I don't remember Dave very well. If you want to know how long ago I watched it, I rented it from Blockbuster when I lived in Anchorage because I'd recently seen A Fish Called Wanda and I really liked Kevin Kline.
I mean, that's a film that'll give you a good first impression of him. Yeah.
You know, I think that I had a knock out of the park when I chose to like Kevin Kline. He is consistently delightful in Bob's Burgers.
Also true.
But I don't remember Dave. It might have a really good screenplay. Kind of doubt it. And I don't like Sleepless in Seattle. I think it's one of Nora Ephron's worst movies. Sorry, Nora. I like When Harry Met Sally. Everyone does. But aside from that, I think I'm out of things to say about the piano, at least for now. Anyone have any closing thoughts?
So I don't know if this has come up on this podcast or not. One of those weird kind of mental criteria I've had with films over the years is like there are certain films I will look at and go, I can see the worst version of this. I can see the safer version of this. One thing I have to hand this movie is like per-hour discussion as far as how this handles both Harvey Keitel and Sam Neill is like I can see the worst version of this, and it would have been a rough watch.
Hmm.
As it is, like there is definitely some raw emotion here, and Campion nails that well. It's like I am glad that this is also a film that does not go for that. Again, let's put it this way: one assault was enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can make arguments about whether or not Harvey Keitel is being creepy during the scenes where he's essentially trading her piano for sex or for uh, titillation. I did really like the scene where he's like obsessing over a hole in her tights
Oh,
because he can't see anything else, which then smash cut to the Maori just like hanging out naked. Uh maybe everything's relative, boys. But if she says no, he like backs off.
yeah.
That's not a lot, but it's something.
It's been a very long time since I've learned sign language, and I know that there's difference between British sign language and American sign language, but
You have to put a U in color in British Sign Language.
true. Yeah, what is their AAVE? The
Bloke speak.
AAVBE. There we go. The fact that the film doesn't really do it does subtitle some of the stuff, though most of the times it's stuff that you can sort of figure it's basically what they're saying, like in the scene where the Maori storm the stage and try to like stop a murder.
Yes, that was pretty good.
They're basically
Yeah.
saying they're basically saying the thing you think they're saying, but I do appreciate that for when they need it to be more vague, they just sort of let the signing be the signing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have Anna Paquin's character or a similar character sort of interpret what they think they're saying, or at least a lot of the film has that kind of distance when it comes to people speaking different language or sort of speaking past each other or not being quite sure what the other person wants or is trying to say to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the servants or like the different other random white people that Sam Neill has in his life are like reading into what everyone else is doing from the very Scottish or Anglo perspective or whatever the thing would be, and it's always funny to try to see them reconcile. Like again, like we were saying earlier, it's like, huh, maybe they carved into the desk their piano because they want their piano, or maybe they're insane. I guess we'll go with they're insane because Or it's like how often the older servant person is like trying to pump the daughter or pump Anna Paquin's character for information, and just it's difficult to trust her because, well, again, she lies constantly.
She's fucking with her on purpose.
Yes.
I do one a previous episode, an extremely good movie on being hard of hearing. Sound of Metal did something that I really liked, which is as the main character learns sign language, that's when subtitles for other people's sign language is introduced. Prior to that point, they're just doing sign language, and you're trying to figure out what they're saying from context. So I like this film does something similar, where it doesn't subtitle her when it doesn't need to, because I think it wants you to engage with her in the way that Harvey Keitel does and Sam Neill doesn't. I think that like forcing the audience to interpret body language and facial expression, and how she one of the things I like about Holly Hunter is she's good at putting her emotion into the signing. I think that's helpful, and I think giving Anna Paquin an opportunity to tell that guy his boat fucking sucks is really funny. Yeah, I think that's it. Todd, do you have anything to plug?
Not at the moment. I am slowly starting to get back into trying to write on film, but right now there's nothing to show for it, so we'll have to hold that off for another time.
Alrighty. Justin, what's your plug for this week?
My plug for this week is the let's see how to read this. The key lever, the capstan, and the back shock of a piano key. Because those are removable, you can insert them like a plug.
I love you, Justin.
Well played.
As always, you can find me, Ellie, on Tumblr at Football in Tuxedos with dashes between the words. You can find me on Blue Sky, Medium, and Letterboxd at LSR42. And you can find this podcast on Blue Sky at Biggest Night Pod. We are available on both Spotify and YouTube. And if you follow us on YouTube, be sure to give us a subscribe, maybe like and comment on the videos so that you can tell me which parts you like and which parts you don't. And that's it for our episode on the piano. But I decided when I rolled our next episode that we weren't done talking about depressing period dramas starring women. So for our next episode, we are going back to the 70s to talk about the Ingmar Bergman film Cries and Whispers. Should be fun. Should be a barrel of laughs.
Well, come on, it's Bergman. That's like Happiness Town.